Thank you for joining us here on Republic TV. It's Saturday night. And one of the biggest jokes, ladies and gentlemen, this entire week has been the manner in which a very big country, at least geographically very big country, called Canada, has made a fool of itself. Thanks to Justin Trudeau, its Prime Minister. We'll tell you all about that. It's a very, very important week gone by diplomatically. India has taken Canada to the cleaners. We'll tell you all about that. Trudeau, in fact, to the cleaners. Here are the headlines. Amid the airline threat calls, a big Republic newsbreak impact. DG Bureau of Civil Aviation Security has chaired a key meeting after multiple airline bomb threat.
Speaker, that's why they called this meeting. They called all airlines to discuss the spate of threats that have been made to the Indian aviation ecosystem.
Till now, Mr. Kimball. Till now, what investigation?
Air India CEO Campbell Wilson after meeting with the DG Bureau of Civil Aviation Security. BJP releases first list for Jharkhand elections. Champai Soren, Babulal Marandi, Sita Soren in first list for the assembly elections. ED continues raids at the Muda office. Documents linked to Chief Minister Siddaramaiah and his wife Parvati seized. Heat preacher Zakir Naik meeting America-designated Lashkar terrorists in Pakistan's Lahore. Something that the Five Eyes obviously can't see. The biggest talking point this week, ladies and gentlemen, has been about Justin Trudeau, the Canadian Prime Minister, making a fool of himself, embarrassing Canada, embarrassing the people of Canada, embarrassing the politicians in Canada, only because he has to survive in Canada as the Prime Minister. The story of Justin Trudeau and his desperation to stay in power was seen all of last week when he tried to embarrass India. And he tried to make a few false allegations, which he himself, in fact, admitted during the middle of the week when he said that he had no proof of Indian role in the Nijjar case. He said he only had intelligence, but no evidentiary proof. The story of Justin Trudeau will be looked at very closely by strategic affairs experts for many, many years to come because of the kind of damage that he's ended up doing between India and Canada diplomatic ties. Here's the story so far.
Credible allegations of a potential link between agents of the government of India and the killing of a Canadian citizen. Credible intelligence that agents of the government of India were involved in the killing of Hardeep Singh Nijjar.
Canada accuses India of extrajudicial killings on its soil. India strikes back, armed with damning proof of Canada's ties to terror.
Their asks of us was, well, how much do you know? Give us the evidence you have on this. And our response was, well, it's within your security agencies. You should be looking into how much they know. You should be engaging us. No, tell us what you know. Show us the evidence. And at that point, it was primarily intelligence, not hard evidentiary proof.
This is something that the United States of America and its allies cannot ignore. On your screen is Sandeep Singh Sidhu, a high-ranking officer with Canada Border Services, recently promoted to the rank of superintendent. But here's the truth Canada is covering up. Sidhu is linked to the Khalistani group ISYFA, terror group fueling unrest in Punjab. His connections with Pakistan's Lakhbir Singh Rode and ISI operatives raise alarms. He's even linked to the assassination of Balwinder Singh Sandhu and notorious gangster Sukh Bikhariwal. Republic asks, has Trudeau exposed his true face? And does the White House regret standing with Canada.
All right, we have our first guest, Ujjal Dosanjh, who's the former Health Minister of Canada, joining us any second now. I'm just waiting for his link to come up in just a few seconds. We will, on the burning question, also be joined by Major General G.D. Bakshi, Dr. Rajiv Nayan, who's a Senior Research Associate, Dr. Brahma Chalani, who's a columnist, Dean Baxendale, who's an author, publisher, and Sunday Guardian columnist who's live from Canada. I also have Daniel Bodman, who's a senior journalist, has been tweeting extensively on the issue of Trudeau making a fool of himself. Professor Andrew Latham, who's an author and professor, live from Minneapolis, with us also on the burning question this evening. I'd like to start with Dr. Brahma Chalani. Dr. Brahma Chalani, you know, even by Trudeau's own standards, this is unprecedented. In fact, I've been watching this personally, monitoring what Trudeau has been saying, doing over the last couple of years. This is unprecedented. I mean, whatever's happened, whatever he has said, whatever he has done, but his government going to this extent is unprecedented diplomatically. I'd like to get your views at the end of this week. It's this tumultuous week diplomatically.
The Canadian Prime Minister Trudeau is deeply unpopular at home. He's unlikely to survive for too long. He'll be gone in the coming months. But his legacy will continue to haunt Indo-Canadian relations. The damage that he has done to the Indo-Canadian relationship will take a long time to repair. But I think the legacy that he's bequeathing is a legacy that will weigh down the India-Canada relationship. The blunt fact is this: Canada has become the international epicenter of the Khalistan militant movement. These Khalistani extremists who openly glorify terrorism operate freely from British Columbia and parts of Ontario. In a way, history is repeating itself. In the first half of the 1980s, Canada became a haven for Sikh terrorists, leading eventually to the 1985 twin bombings that targeted Air India flights. Yet, India let Canada off the hook over those twin bombings. Successive Indian governments let Canada off the hook. As a consequence, Ottawa took 21 years to institute a commission of inquiry into those bombings. No one was brought to justice for those twin bombings. The mastermind of those twin bombings, Talvinder Parmar, was eventually killed by police in India when he sneaked into Punjab state from Pakistan. So today, again, India is facing the challenge of Canada becoming the global hub of Sikh extremists. So for India, this is a very serious national security challenge. And I think for Canada, because these guys are threatening the security of a country located thousands of kilometers away from Canada, so many Canadians have not taken the Khalistani threat seriously, but eventually these Khalistani extremists could threaten Canada's own security in time to come. But for India, this is a pressing security challenge.
Yeah. You know, I just read a tweet, even it's not just Indians who are extremely upset. And let me tell you, Daniel Bodman, I'd like to start with you. I have a lot of friends, a lot of, close associates who are now in Canada, right? I mean, they're working in Canada, but they're extremely upset with what is going on. Even Canadians that I know are extremely upset with what's going on. And I read a tweet somewhere, and it sort of sums up the feeling of what most Indians are going through while looking at what Justin Trudeau has done. And let me tell you, Justin Trudeau is extremely unpopular here in India. Extremely unpopular. We have a large heart. We like world leaders. We can even deal with Biden, but Justin Trudeau is extremely unpopular. Let me tell you why. I still remember at the height of the farmers' agitation, Justin Trudeau had no business intervening and taking sides. He took a side. He took a side and he supported these so-called farmers. They weren't farmers in the first place. He supported farmers. And they're the same people who lost in the recent elections that were held here in Haryana. He's extremely unpopular. A few years back, I think it was 2018 or 2019, I can't remember the year, when Republic TV, that is this channel that you're live on, had conducted a sting operation on Khalistani terrorists. We went all the way to London. My colleague Shawan went to London, did a sting on these terrorists, right, who admit that their network has killed over 2,000, 2,500 Indians, including a former prime minister in the last few decades. We have it on camera. And one of your prime minister's allies called Jagmeet Singh is seen sharing the stage with the same terrorist that we did a sting operation on, where he confesses and he shares the stage and he's sympathetic to the Khalistani cause, to the terrorist cause, right? And can you imagine, this is what we are dealing with at a time when we have people like Trudeau who are trying to throw eggs at India, right? We have people like the European Parliament that we deal with who don't know where Manipur is on a map, but they want to talk about what's happening in India. We've dealt with this nonsense for very long, Daniel Bodman, and that's why we can't stand people like Justin Trudeau. I see your views on social media. What's your take on what he's been saying all along?
Well, first of all, it's nice to be here, and it's nice that my reputation is one who effectively cyberbullies the Prime Minister of Canada. I guess I've done a good job at that. Listen, I know the video you're talking about. I've seen the Republic Sting TV thing. I've known since the beginning that Jagmeet Singh is a Khalistani extremist sympathizer. I've seen the San Francisco stuff. I've seen that clip where they openly support violence in front of Jagmeet. I've seen the clip of him promoting Air India conspiracies on the CBC. And listen, Justin Trudeau has been ideologically compromised by not just the Khalistanis, but the Khalistanis among other any sort of radical and extremist group sort of glommed onto Justin Trudeau. I'm going to give you a great military quote from the greatest mind of the 21st century, the dear leader Justin Trudeau. And this is a real quote. Quote, "If you kill your enemies, they win." So it is understandable that if you are a terrorist organization or any type of extremist, you might feel like the trust fund kid who, his greatest success was being a substitute drama teacher, who thinks that, again, if you kill your enemies, they win in war. Of course, this guy would be a soft infiltration target. So, I mean, I understand the Indian point of view. I remember Jaspar Atwal, the convicted terrorist who tried to assassinate an Indian minister on Canadian soil, being invited by the Liberal Party to India on a diplomatic trip. So the rot within the Liberal Party goes deep. The functioning of the Canadian government and the competency on these issues is abysmal across the board. It's not just Khalistan. It's not just Islamic terrorists. They invited a actual Waffen SS Nazi and gave him a standing ovation in Parliament in front of Volodymyr Zelensky, and completely undermined the Western, this was the greatest, Justin Trudeau was the greatest propaganda victory for Vladimir Putin in the entire course of the war. So these are the people running the country, where they couldn't figure out that the guy who joined the people who were fighting the Soviet Union in the 1940s might need a bit more of a background check. This is standard stuff. If you have a 7th grade education, you should know this. But again, this is the state of Canada, where no one's vetting anything. There are no concerns for extremism. In fact, extremism, if it's found, is more likely to be rewarded. And the RCMP and the Toronto Police and all the police forces are online hate speech monitors. That is our focus. They're watching this show to see if I correctly or incorrectly gender or misgender someone. That's the number one security concern in Canada right now is, will Daniel and his ilk respect the pronouns of whatever lunatics are running around in our school system? And counterterrorism, counterterrorism. Again, if you kill your enemies, they win. So why would you ever take action against them? Because that would only help them. Instead, you must hug the terrorism away. I'll give you another thing. Justin Trudeau once said that bringing back ISIS fighters, when he was confronted on it, after he did the whole Islamophobia shtick, he thought that bringing back ISIS fighters, quote, would be a powerful voice for de-radicalization. So we have radical people in the country of Canada, but don't worry, the Liberals have a plan. We will be de-radicalizing them with returning ISIS fighters, because they are by far the most level-headed and least extreme people in the country. So when you kill your enemies, they win, and when people are too radical, you use ISIS to de-radicalize them, and you might as well invite a Nazi into Parliament. This is the current state of the Canadian Liberal Party, and it's an absolute joke. And this is why they're projected to come in fourth place in the next election. But because Justin Trudeau and Jagmeet Singh have entered into this Faustian bargain, holding their parties together, they're gonna sort of ride it to the end, and we might be faced with another year of this.
Yeah. I'd like to go across to Major J.D. Bakshi. Major J.D. Bakshi, you know, you see what's happening here, General Bakshi. I mean, you have people like Trudeau, and we've been debating about Trudeau for the last couple of years. Not because he's important, because he likes to put his, sort of poke his nose into Indian affairs. I mean, before I even get across to the kind of terror that he supports, General Bakshi, I'd like to get your view on the kind of double standards that India is seeing, right? On one hand, you have Trudeau, who's hobnobbing with terrorists, right? He's openly hobnobbing with terrorists. And I saw some pictures this morning of what happened in Canada last night of, of them holding protests. This is Khalistani terrorists holding protests, Khalistani terrorists defacing the Prime Minister's photos, tearing up the Indian tricolour. And this nonsense is happening under Trudeau's watch. General Bakshi, how do you look at this? And how do you think India should respond to it?
As apropos the issue of Justin Trudeau and his dad, right? 38 years ago was this Kanishka tragedy that Professor Brahmachalani was talking about. 329 innocents killed, out of which 268 were Canadian citizens of Indian origin. Now, I'm not interpreting this in racist terms, but the simple fact is they have done sweet Fanny Adams to bring these people to justice, to get them to book. People who killed Canadian citizens. And there was not one jumbo jet liner on target, there were two. It is just a great, stroke of good luck that the second jumbo jet liner that was being targeted in Tokyo, that suitcase bomb which the Khalistani terrorists were putting into that jet airliner blew up on that luggage belt. And those passengers and that plane got saved. There was not one plane on target, there were two planes on target. This is the greatest terrorist strike before 9/11 happened, right? Otherwise, this was the biggest mass casualty terror strike. What has Justin Trudeau or his dad done to bring those people to justice? Who is he concerned about? A Khalistani terrorist. Don't forget, for 10 years, they denied Niger the passport. They denied Niger entry into Canada because of a dubious background, right? And now they are accusing you of all sorts of things, of being supporters of the Lawrence Bishnoi gang. We've put in tradition requests to get those criminals out, to get them to justice. They haven't helped a bit. They haven't helped a bit. Because of his razor wafer thin majority that he is depending upon of the Khalistani people of Khalistani ilk in Canada to stay in power. His own party, caucus, is gunning for him. They want him out of the way. He's lost two major by-elections in Ottawa and Montreal, right? His image is taking a battering. His polls are taking a battering. The prices of houses are going up and up and up in Canada. The economy is going down, down, down. So whom do you choose to divert attention to? To India. You are facing a commission of inquiry that you let China interfere in your internal affairs, right? And how do you counter it? By trying to deflect the attention towards India. Easy, soft target. Won't do anything much in return. China will, they arrested that Ming lady, the Hawaii CEO. And China promptly arrested 2 of their Canadian citizens and forced them to disgorge that lady. They had to let her go. Now they are trying to repair burst relations because China is a big economic power and you lose economically if you mess with China. It looks like, India seems to be an easy target. And let me tell you one more thing. I'm sorry, it may wound the amour propre of my Canadian friends. I have nothing against them. But the simple fact is that their government acts as a team B of the deep state in America. Right? The Americans are gunning for India. Why? Let me tell you, in unequivocal terms. The BRICS summit is about to happen. De-dollarization is being talked of, and we are trying to come up with a new BRICS currency, a new exchange mechanism that will let us trade in local currencies. And that effectively means de-dollarization. $8.6 billion a day is the American debt that is escalating. Brazil has come up with concrete proposals. United States is quite concerned that India might back those proposals in Russia 2-3 days down the line. And let me tell you, that will have a major downstream impact. So put pressure on India. And one of the cards to put pressure on India is the Khalistani card. The Five Eyes get together to sort of promote Khalistan, to promote Khalistani terrorism. There is that gentleman called Pannu in the United States who threatens that don't travel in Air India. Can you get more open in terms of terrorist kind of threats? You are openly talking of breaking up the Indian unions. You are holding floats in Canada which celebrate the assassination of an Indian Prime Minister.
Yeah.
I think we need to do the same then.
Yeah.
To show you how it feels.
General Bakshi, another aspect that is sort of shown through last couple of days. Professor Andrew Latham, this question is to you. There's a video that's gone viral. I believe it was from the deposition of Justin Trudeau, where he himself says it was in the form of, that is, the information shared with India was in the form of intelligence. There is no evidentiary proof. That's a very classic video that is being used right against people like Trudeau. And many in India also feel that this could be his last dice, even as he tries to desperately cling on to power. How are the people in Canada looking at it? Because there are, if I'm not wrong, at least 3 million Indians in Canada, right? I'm not sure Trudeau is a popular figure among them today.
Well, Trudeau is not a popular figure amongst any Canadians these days. I grew up in a suburb of Toronto called Brampton, and I am now a minority person there.
Why do you say that?
Because the Punjabi population far exceeds the white Anglo-Saxon Protestant population, although I'm a Catholic, so that doesn't really apply. But my point is this, that there are a couple of constituencies around Vancouver and just outside Toronto that are really important to the Liberal Party of Canada. And that Liberal Party is inclined to turn a blind eye. That's where that particular, it was horrible, that parade, the Khalistani parade, in which this gigantic statue of Indira Gandhi soaked in blood, that was my hometown. That was my hometown. And there are a few really important constituencies in Canada where Justin Bieber. I'm sorry, Justin Trudeau.
Bieber. No, go ahead. That's how serious we take him. Yeah, go ahead. Sure.
The Liberal Party of Canada really needs to pay attention to those few constituencies. Otherwise, it has no chance of winning. Jagmeet Singh, I'm sure everybody who's listening to this knows that there was a minority government in Ottawa, and Jagmeet Singh was the guy that held the Liberal Party's government together.
Yeah.
And he dumped Trudeau, but not really. I guess my basic point, my underlying point in all of this is that the Liberal Party is entirely indebted to the Punjabi.
Go ahead. I feel you're pulling back your punches. It's okay. You can go ahead. Speak your mind. It's fine.
Oh, not again.
I don't want to be totally obnoxious, but yes.
It's okay. Go ahead.
There's politics at play here, and Canadians shouldn't be ignoring the politics. And it goes back, as my friend earlier was pointing out, it goes back not 10 years, not 20 years, but 30 years.
Yes.
Right? There's this dynamic at play.
Yeah. You made a few good points there, Andrew. I'm going to take away from some of those points and take my next question to Dr. Rajiv Nayan.
Just a few?
Sure. Okay. You want to add something? Okay. You want to add something?
I was going to say just a few good points. I thought I made a whole bunch.
No. I mean, I'm going to take a few good points of yours ahead. Right. Dr. Rajiv Nayan, I think, Professor Latham was being very, very careful with his words there. But the fact is, let me, in fact, try and say what you were trying to say, right, Professor Latham? Let me say it bluntly. Trudeau is cornered. Trudeau needs the Khalistani sympathizers with him, and that is why he's trying to appease Jagmeet, because he needs Jagmeet to just simply hang on to power. It's as simple as that. It's okay, right? It's okay, right? Dr. Rajiv Nayan, these Khalistani terrorists are a pain in the backside. I'm sorry for my words, but that's the truth. They're a menace wherever you see them, thrive in the US, where they seem to be calling the shots with people like Kamala Harris and Joe Biden. The same Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, by the way. Kamala Harris a few weeks back had said that Israel should not dare invade Rafah, and that's exactly where Sinwar was murdered, was killed, eliminated by Israel. And thank God for that, because Israel had a spine. Netanyahu had a spine. He defied America and American leadership of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. And he said, you know what, we'll do what we have to do. And he did that. He went ahead and he defied them and eliminated Sinwar. And why do we have to pay attention to people like that? Dr. Rajiv Nayan, people like Joe Biden, people like Kamala Harris. Why do we have to care about them anymore?
Look, first of all, I must compliment you for bringing sane voices on your television channel.
It's rare. It's rare.
But I must congratulate you for doing that. Otherwise, very wrong perspective was going, as if India is against Sikhs or India is against Canada. Actually, I slightly disagree that Trudeau will succeed in getting 6 votes or Punjabi votes. It is very small, hardly 700 people who generally come out on the streets and support these Khalistani elements in Canada. So, but somehow it is being blown, or it has been wrongly sold to Trudeau, and he'll pay price for it. So there is no doubt about it. And very nicely, in the United States, there are saner voices there. And today you talked about American politics, Biden. And in fact, Biden was the one who had liquidated Al-Zawahiri, and Trudeau had celebrated on August 2nd, 2022. So this is what we generally call hypocrisy, general hypocrisy. That's apart. But there are also voices which are really articulating, whether it is in Canada or in California. You should not allow these drug lords who are operating in collaboration with ISI agents, well-known terrorists, and what will the consequences? And I would like to refer you to the recent article written on October 15th on American Enterprise Institute, which is considered to be a very respectable think tank of so-called neocons, but they are basically Republicans. And Mr. Michael Rubin has very beautifully written what is going on, and he said that India should work to get Canada declared as a terrorist state. So they should basically work for that.
Yes.
They should not mince words, and they should go ahead for that. And that is the real issue. What Canada is been under Trudeau, I will not just, there are many good Canadians on your screen,
Yes.
on your channel, and I am thankful to them that they are bringing a correct perspective and bringing the correct perspective to the world. So I am really thankful to them. So what they are doing, they are bringing bad name to Canada. And they are not realizing, Trudeau is not realizing that he is not only indirectly, but directly violating the international law, UN Charter, and is permitting, in fact, the terrorist elements to operate on Canadian soil, those who are talking about raising question mark, or we can say, or affecting India's territorial integrity and sovereignty. So this is against international law.
Yeah.
He should realize that. And plus, the person who is being oft quoted today is Mr. Jagmeet Singh.
Yeah.
Jagmeet Singh is trying to get this decriminalize the drug activities. Plus, he wants to get this anti-terrorist act scrapped. So what he is planning to do? Is he working with Trudeau to get Canada a soil for terrorist activities? Does he want Canada to replace Pakistan? So sometimes I wonder, or any other country which has been harboring or is supporting terrorist activities. So a country which was known for its democracy, which was known for its liberal ideology, is now competing with Pakistan to become a terrorist state. So this is what Trudeau is contributing to this great country, and which has got many great people who are here on television channel also.
Yeah.
So this is the situation which has where Canada has come to. So I think we must sympathize with Canadian people, and I am sure that in the coming election, as everyone is talking about, he's on a weak wicket, and he will be defeated. And India and Canada relationship will be at least restored, and his father's legacy, which he is carrying forward, so that will be erased, and India and Canada
Dr.
can work
Nayan?
together.
Yeah, if I can take a question with Dean. Dean Baxendale is joining us live from Canada. Hi, Dean, can you hear me? Good evening. Okay, Dean, can you?
I can.
Yeah. Okay, great. So, Dean, it's ironic that you know what Trudeau has done, because India has also today named a Canadian border police official in a terror case, and we have details of it. We've shared the dossier with Canada, right? This is the name of a Canadian Border Service Agency official, right? His name has come up in a list of fugitives that New Delhi wants to be deported from Canada, and if we've been sharing such names in the past. Sandeep Singh Sidhu, he's employed with your government agency, right? I mean, while your government there under Trudeau tries to throw darts at India, the fact is Nijjar himself was a terrorist. And Nijjar himself was a Pakistani pawn who was protected by Canada despite his criminal record. So Canada seems to have become a haven, a safe haven for terrorists globally.
Well, that seems certainly being the narrative that the Indian media has painted over the past week. But the reality is that the Canadian government over the past 40 years, and actually it was our ineptitude and missteps on the Air India bombing and the prosecution thereof. We could have stopped that and didn't. And ultimately, we find ourselves where nations, India included, are taking it upon themselves to use transnational oppression inside our country. I don't know the specifics of the case where India has alleged that a Canadian citizen is also involved with aiding and abetting Sikh separatists, or as you call them, terrorists. But there also is, we need to also look at the fact that, we've allowed this to take place for a long period of time, but it does not take away from the fact that a person was murdered on Canadian soil, and it appears, based on the evidence coming, out of Washington, linking directly.
What's the evidence, if I may ask you, Dean? What's the evidence?
Listen, I think we can play around this all we want, but the reality is the Canadian government went to the Indian government over a year ago with credible information. And listen, what intelligence? Well, we're going to see the evidence very soon in court. We're certainly not. The RCMP is not going to show their evidence in a presser. You don't get the RCMP commissioner coming out and making statements that he did without having solid backup and evidence that will be shown in a court of law. So I think that, though, we all need to dial this back a little bit, and we need to look at what are the effects on Canadian Sikhs, Muslims, and Hindus in our country. They are suffering from this.
Muslims and Sikhs. 1 minute. Can I just stop you there, Dean, for a second? 1 second. Just hold on there for a second.
Peace-abiding.
No, 1 minute. 1 second. I heard your RCMP, not our RCMP, your RCMP say it was not all Sikhs who are being targeted, but Khalistani terrorists and Khalistani extremists specifically who are being targeted. Right? We are not saying India is targeting them. The RCMP said specifically it was the Khalistani extremists who face some sort of a threat. I don't know who they face a threat from, because there's absolutely no evidence so far that any of us have seen, right? None of us have seen that. I see Professor Latham also smiling at what you said. Professor Latham, this is the first time that I've heard that Muslims and Sikhs are facing some sort of a threat or fear in Canada. Is that true? It's bizarre.
I never said that.
No, but you said something to that effect, that they face a threat.
I did.
I said they're being affected.
Affected? How are they being affected? How are Muslims being affected in Canada? If anything, it is, 1 minute, if anything, it's a parliamentarian from Canada called Chandra Arya. If I'm not wrong, a parliamentarian called Chandra Arya of Indian origin who put out a video saying that he has to go to a Hindu festival at a Hindu event with security because he's being targeted by Khalistani terrorists. I just lost the line there. Dean's gone. Dean's gone. I was asking him a valid question because it was a Canadian MP called Chandra Arya. Am I wrong, Daniel? It was Chandra Arya put out a video saying that he's being targeted by extremists, by terrorists.
Yeah, Chandra Arya has been harassed and targeted and threatened by the Khalistanis for the last 5 years or so now. Yeah, they don't. They harass him. He's Hindu. And Sikhs do suffer in Canada. I'm going to go out there from Khalistani extremism. I mean, look at Usul Dasanj, Baraj Diol. Any Sikhs who speak up against Khalistan are viciously beaten. The guy you're accusing of terrorism, our border security agent, didn't he murder a Sikh activist, according to the Indian government? And listen, as I said at the beginning, if the number one priority of the Canadian is a Canadian string of Justin Trudeau, we must protect Khalistani terrorists and gangsters at all costs, like Hardip Singh Najjar. Well, then the biggest threat to Khalistani gangster terrorists in Canada is other Khalistani gangster terrorists. Yeah. So that would be that. But I'm going to give Dee the benefit of the doubt. He was just saying this issue writ large, I think, is having an effect on different communities in Canada for multiple reasons. I think that was the more general point. And yeah, the Trudeau and Singh government have sown this Hindu-Sikh discord, which really shouldn't be there because it doesn't exist in India.
I saw a very disturbing video, Daniel. I'm sorry to cut you short there, but I saw a very, very disturbing video. Just to take away from that point, I'm going to Brahma Chalani, but I want to make that point there. I saw a very disturbing video, Brahma Chalani, of an Indian who is a Canadian citizen now and has been living there for 2 generations. He's 2 generations old in Canada. Facing a lot of hate because of what has happened. I saw a video where this old lady, right, who's a Canadian citizen, maybe of Canadian origin, targeting an Indian because he's of Indian origin, but he's still a Canadian citizen. Look at the levels to which this can go and the ramifications it may have, because there are 3 million of Indians living there, of Indians or people of Indian origin, could be much more. But the kind of ramifications that someone as irresponsible as Trudeau could make on the people of Indian origin, the threat that he poses with the kind of moves that he's made. Dr. Chalani.
There are 2 things here. First, whenever in the past a foreign state has accused agents of a foreign government of carrying out a killing on its soil, it has normally presented forensic audio or video evidence in the public domain. For example, in 2010, when Israeli agents killed a Hamas leader in Dubai, the Dubai police, within days, released forensic audio and video evidence. So that's been the pattern in the past. Now, in the case of Trudeau, he triggered a downward spiral in bilateral relations without releasing any evidence. And in recent days, he has admitted that he was relying on raw intelligence, not on tangible evidence. On raw intelligence, not on tangible evidence. So that's one. But I think there are two questions about India that we should keep in mind. First, India's public diplomacy. India is getting a bad press internationally. We should not forget that. The Indian viewpoint is not being presented in the international media. If you read the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, or even the Canadian press, they are giving one-sided version of the developments. Even the facts are being distorted. It's incumbent on India to do what is necessary in the public diplomacy domain. The press is biased in the West. We all know that.
Yeah, I was about to say that, yeah.
But should we just take it lying down? For example, Canada's state-owned CBS television recently, a few days ago, had a 10-minute interview with Pannoon, the New York-based guy who's been making terrorist threats against India. But was there any reaction from the Indian government?
Made them against Indian Canadians.
That CBS was giving a platform to a well-known Sikh extremist who makes terrorist threats against India, and CBS has a bureau in New Delhi. So there have to be consequences for news organizations that give a voice to terrorist figures. The other thing that, again, we should not forget that in India, is the gap between what India is saying and what Canada is saying. Trudeau will leave office sooner or later.
Yeah.
But this problem will linger on.
Absolutely.
Even the Conservative Party leader in Canada is pandering to Sikh militants. He went to Brampton, Gurdwara, Brampton. Professor Latham is from Brampton, he said, right?
Yeah.
The Gurdwara in Brampton, Ontario, that Gurdwara staged the parade float celebrating the assassination of Indira Gandhi.
Yeah.
That Gurdwara is the hotbed of Khalistan militancy. And the Conservative Party leader went and addressed Khalistanis there. So we should not think that this is just a Trudeau created problem. The problem may have been created by Trudeau, but he will bequeath that problem to the next government, and India-Canada relations will not suddenly become good once Trudeau leaves. In fact, for example, India has been repeatedly saying that Canada is welcoming criminals, gangsters from Indian Punjab, including giving visas to known gangsters, thereby fostering a nexus between Canada-based Sikh separatists and organized crime and drug syndicates, with the goal of reviving Sikh militancy in India. And what is Ottawa's response? Ottawa says that India's definition of what constitutes a crime or terrorist action does not always mesh with Canadian legal standards. So, the gap between the two will persist under a new government in Ottawa.
Yeah, no, I want to take that point to Dean, actually. Dean, taking that point away from Dr. Brahmachalani, and he's one of India's foremost, strategic affairs experts, right? There have been specific details about Lawrence Bishnoi gang, right? Lawrence Bishnoi is a criminal. And I heard, if I'm not wrong, I heard the Canadian Prime Minister Trudeau the Great mention Lawrence Bishnoi, saying that Indian diplomats, and his allegation was that Indian diplomats take information and pass it on to Lawrence Bishnoi gang, okay? And you know what? India has been sharing information about Lawrence Bishnoi gang. There are 21 extradition requests that have been shared with Canada. And I can't imagine why any right-thinking country would refrain from extraditing or fail to extradite people of, for example, the Lawrence Bishnoi gang in the first place. Canada has a proven record of harboring global terrorists, sir. Dean.
Wow, that's a charged statement. I think that, I think that, once again, this is a very complex situation. When we're talking about organized crime being involved with an extrajudicial killing, if that's the case, as the RCMP alleges and as our Prime Minister does, I would suggest that the Bishnoi gang, which has been identified, involved with the drug trade, extortion, transnational oppression, our police force and intelligence agencies need to understand that these individuals in our country need to be prosecuted and brought to justice. As far as the 21 extradition requests, none of them have actually been presented to the court.
Dean, can I ask you a counter question? Is it okay if I ask you a counter question?
Go ahead.
Usually we're not this polite on Indian television, but I'm going to ask you, I'm going to take your permission and then ask you.
That's so nice. I appreciate that.
Usually on debates we're not this polite, but I'm going to take your permission and ask you a counter question. Would you classify a person who tries to assassinate a prime minister of a country as a terrorist?
Listen,
no. A very simple question. Any person. Okay, let me be a little more specific.
A terrorist, yes.
Be a little more specific.
Absolutely.
Would you classify a person who attempts, not just threatens, but also attempts physically in the real world to eliminate the Prime Minister of India? Would you classify such a person as a terrorist?
They could be simply a murderer or an attempted murder, or they could be a terrorist that attacks
such person, Dean, was interviewed, like Dr. Brahmachalani said, such person called Pannu, who tried to eliminate and assassinate, target the Prime Minister of India in Punjab before the Lok Sabha elections, was interviewed by your state television. Sir, Dean, is that not open harboring of terror? He says he speaks to Trudeau. Pannu says he speaks to Trudeau.
If there is proof that that individual is involved directly in an assassination plot or an attempted murder, then that person should be brought to trial and justice should be served in a court of law.
Pannu, Boardman, Daniel wanted to say something. Pannu is a terrorist. Is there any doubt about that, Daniel?
So that's not going to get it. Okay, so India calls him a terrorist. Canada just calls him a lovely activist.
Activist, of course.
Identifiable groups all the time. So yes, Pannu is running around threatening to kill everyone and blow up airplanes and do October 7th. I've seen it all, okay? I'm trying to make the point, though, from the Canadian perspective, there's actually a different track to this interview with Pannu. In the interview on the CBC, the state broadcaster, which is 10 minutes unopposed, he goes on to say that every Indian Canadian citizen should be suspected of dual loyalties.
Can you imagine that?
Every Indian Canadian citizen needs to be, quote, weeded out and be forced to make statements disowning Narendra Modi in order to remain in Canada. That is insane.
Yeah, in India they would have called that. In India, you know what? In India, Daniel, if anybody dares say that, right, there would be international articles like Dr. Chalani was saying across the media in the West.
Exactly.
Panning India, right? But that is par for the course in Canada.
It's par for the course. I want to make one more point. Like, that we were so crazy far past the line, and India might not get it because there's not a lot of anti-Semitism in India. But this actually sparked the Jewish organizations in Canada, led by a Tafsik one, to actually speak about it, because this charge of dual loyalties and needing to weed out citizens, this has often been weaponized against the Jewish community historically. And then when they saw it be so grossly violated, like weaponized directly against the Indian Canadian community, on the state broadcaster with no pushback, with the CBC host just smiling, yes, we must weed out all Indian Canadians for disloyalty. It was insane. And it actually caused a controversy, a blowback from...
Daniel, I'm going to cut you short there. Because I'm extremely short of time. But I want to, only contrast that to the kind of platform that BBC gave. to someone who was eliminated by Israel and designated as a terrorist recently. General G.D. Bakshi, I'm going to give you 30 seconds because I'm running out of time and then I have to take a break, right? General Bakshi, I think the time has come for India to stare back at all these people, including the Five Eyes that have really turned blind to terror suddenly.
Absolutely. We wax eloquent about the rule of law, and yet democracies of all states, they harbor not only terrorists, they harbor drug lords, drug traffickers, human traffickers on the plea of free speech. I mean, that's giving it a stretch. That's really giving it a stretch. And, people who are openly celebrating the assassinations of our Prime Minister, the killing of our citizens. I mean, you forget our citizens. I'm talking of Canadian citizens now.
Yeah.
Just because they belong to a particular ethnicity or a particular skin color doesn't mean that they're murdered.
I'm giving last 10 seconds. I'm giving 15 seconds to Professor Latham because I just saw him raise his hand there. So I'm giving him 15 seconds to make a last point.
That did it.
Yeah, Professor Latham, last point.
I want to complicate the story just a little bit. When I grew up in Brampton and when I was in high school, all of the Sikhs I knew had English accents. And one actually had a turban, which was a Union Jack. So, these identities are a little more complicated than we sometimes assume. I had more in common with my Sikh English, because I was born in England. I had more in common with them than I did with a lot of other
I'm going to make one
Canadians.
last point and leave it at that, Professor Latham. We here at Republic believe that an illegal immigrant is an illegal immigrant. Right? If you don't want them, don't accept them. But it's your problem to deal with. We deal with similar problems, and we have millions of them just pouring in from our porous borders with Bangladesh, right? Or even with Pakistan. We have them. We deal with it in our own way. If you have a problem, and I think nations should deal with it in their own way. Thank you for joining us on the burning question. Fantastic discussion. I'll take away a lot of points from this one. Thank you very much, General Bakshi, Dr. Nayan, Dr. Brahmachalani, Dean Daniel, and Professor Latham. It was a pleasure speaking to all of you. Gentlemen, thank you very much.